Well, Regina, how is Texas?
I'll tell you what, it's not the best state in the union. Now, I know that it is said to be. It's the Lone Star State and all of these things, but um, it's not bad. It's not bad, and I'll tell you why. Um, it's so warm. And I just want to say, I want to give a big shout out and welcome everyone to live Suta and the City, coming you from two states. New York, that's Stephen, and Texas, that's Regina. And we are, as always, happy to see you here this evening or morning, as the case may be. We know that some of you are starting your day with us, and we're very, very grateful for that. It's a beautiful way to start the day. It's also a beautiful way to end the day. So whichever side of the world you're on, you're welcome with us. And we're going to continue our discussion of these amazing arahants, these bhikkhunis, this first that we know of, most powerful sisterhood in the truest sense of the words. We're going to continue reading their poetry. But before we do, one thing that we thought was interesting, and forgive my co-host, the bird over there, I'm not exactly sure what he's saying, but I'm sure it's important. One of the things we wanted to share, as you well know, these poems that we're reading by these enlightened women are, I think, amongst the oldest written poems known to man, to personkind. Am I correct, Stephen?
I
Is,
would say probably. But we have a very special non-Indian interloper today in our sutta study.
we do indeed. We do have a non-Indian, and I don't think I'd even call her an interloper. I think that I would call her a sister spirit or sister in spirit, and that is the wonderful Sappho. And I had pulled up a poem of hers that we were going to read, and I had also lost it. I'm going to pull it up again so that we can take a look at it. And the interesting thing about Sappho, she was an incredibly prolific poet and writer, and she was born at around 630 BC, which means that she was writing at approximately the same time as our Arahant nuns were also, uh, can't say, were doing their poetry as well. Um, so yeah, that's one of the things that's quite interesting about Sappho.
It seems as if the ancient Greeks took more to writing quicker than the Indians, although the Indians seem to have better memories. So we have much more intact poetry in the Pali Canon. But Plato did warn about the dangers of writing, and he thought it was a bad idea. And he thought people were never going to learn anything properly if they just read it off the page. And I could certainly speak as a person whose memory is not what it should be.
Well, what's interesting is in some ways, or in many ways, perhaps not writing these scriptures down is much to our benefit. Let me go ahead and share with you. I'll go ahead and read, and I'm going to share the screen, Sappho's poem, which was written. And hopefully you can all see that now. Stephen, can you see it?
Yes. Would you tell us about these brackets?
I will. So these brackets right here, at first when I looked at this poem, I was thinking, is this some type of Gertrude Stein concept that I had? What is going on? Maybe she, you know, was Gertrude Stein's inspiration, but no, this unintelligible, these markings, what they actually do, they're indicative of her manuscript. Can you see it here?
Yeah.
Okay, so she wrote down her poetry, and the little brackets, which I'll show you again, are indicative of these holes in the papyrus that maybe, who knows, maybe some mischievous moths figured this will be a nice part for me to eat out of this poem. And so the parts in the brackets indicate these holes where the text is missing. So that's what I didn't know when I first saw it. As I said, I thought it was a Gertrude Stein thing, but it's not. This is what we have remaining of this particular poem, which again was written near the time of our enlightened nuns. And I will read it. Pity, trembling, flesh by now old age, covers, flies in pursuit, noble, taking, sing to us the one with violets in her lap. Mostly goes astray. So now you can use your creativity to try and figure out what it is that she was speaking about. Stephen, do you have any ideas?
Well, on the one hand, I could say there's probably so much that one can unpack from this, but I'm not so sure we should spend so much time talking about this poem. I would say that it's important to note, and I noticed this in the last session, that when I mentioned that the ancient Greek statues, which are white, have been thought for a long time in the modern era to be this kind of model of ancient Greece, as very kind of plain, austere. But then later people realized that in fact that they were highly painted. And so we're looking at the statues all wrong in a way. And we are in a way looking at Sappho's poetry all wrong too. And so it's becoming a sort of artwork in a new sense, in a sense that wasn't intended. But maybe that's okay too, as we try to sort of pierce through this giant time gap between us and her. And maybe we should just leave it as is. Do you have an image to show us of what the papyrus looks like?
Well, here's the papyrus. Are you able to see it? I thought, here,
No,
let
I
me
only
stop
see,
and then reshare. So sorry, I thought you guys were able to see the papyrus. So here's the
yeah,
papyrus. These are the holes that the brackets indicate.
right.
And then, are you able to see this image
Yeah,
of Sappho?
yes.
So here she is.
So
And
Sappho was not an arahant, but she certainly was a very accomplished poet. And I think it's very nice to remind ourselves that besides the Pali Canon being important information about the path towards awakening, it also is an incredible literary document. And it contains a very large amount of poetry, which the Therigatha is. It is poetry. It's not just a list of instructions. And so it was clearly designed as something for oral recitation in meter to have an effect upon an audience. It was to read it, to recite it would have been like a performance. And so I think this is where those kindred spirits can be seen.
definitely, definitely. And this and in other places, Sappho was renowned in a time when women were not, as were these nuns. Very strong woman, as you can see her depicted in this stance, as were our nuns. They stood up to Mara. So lots of similarities. And I think we can move on to our first bhikkhuni. What do you think, Stephen?
Sure.
Let's do it. So we're starting this particular session with the Suta Vijaya. And as always, we will need volunteers to read. So if you can hover over your name and raise your hand so that we can have you read. Okay, we don't have a volunteer. Why don't we
So
have,
far, no, none.
so we'll
Maybe
have,
I'll read the intro, and then maybe hopefully people can raise their hand to read the verse section.
okay, sounds great.
At
I'll
Savatthi.
read.
Then in the morning, the Bhikkhuni Vijaya dressed. She sat down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding. Then Mara, the evil one, desiring to arouse fear, trepidation, and terror in the Bhikkhuni Vijaya, desiring to make her fall away from concentration, approached her and addressed her in verse.
Thank you, Stephen. I think I heard Sue-Ann saying that she would read. So Sue-Ann,
Yeah.
if you could read 528 and then the prose that follows.
Okay. You are so young and beautiful, and I too am a youth in my prime. Come, noble lady, let us rejoice with the music of a fivefold ensemble. Then it occurred to Bhikkhuni Vijaya, now who is this? This is Mara, the evil one, desiring to make me fall away from concentration. Then the Bhikkhuni Vijaya, having understood this is Mara, the evil one, replied to him in verse.
Thank you, Sue-Ann. Jane Marie, could you take the next two verses, please?
Sure. Forms, sounds, tastes, odors, and delightful tactile objects. I offer them right back to you, for I, O Mara, do not need them. I am repelled and humiliated by this foul, putrid body, subject to breakup, fragile. I've uprooted sensual craving.
Thank you. And next we have Gita. If you can read 531 to the end, please.
Hello, everybody. Thank
Hi.
you for the opportunity. Hi.
Thank you, Gita.
As to those beings who fare amidst form, and those who abide in the formless, and those peaceful attainments too, everywhere darkness has been destroyed. Then Mara, the evil one, realizing the Bhikkhuni Vijaya knows me, sad and disappointed, disappeared right there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we see the continuation of these women being able to stand up to that which would compel them backwards, but they can't be, right? Because they're arahants, they're enlightened. And we can proceed on to the poem. So Ken, if you could read from 169 to 171.
4 times, 5 times, I went out from the monastery with no peace in my heart, no control over my mind. I approached a nun, honored her, questioned her. She taught me the Dhamma about physicality and the senses, about the 4 noble truths, about how we know what we know, and powers that can be cultivated, about what brings us to awakening, the eightfold path to the highest goal.
Thank you, Ken. And then finishing up the poem, Stephanie, please.
I listened to what she said and did what she taught. In the first watch of the night, I remembered my previous births. In the middle watch, I became able to see what was not visible. And in the last watch, I split open the mass of mental darkness. And so I lived, filling my body with joy and happiness. 7 days after splitting open the mass of mental darkness, I stretched out my feet.
Thank you so much. I really love how in many of these poems, after this explanation of having transcended, there's just this simple body movement of either washing the feet, stretching out the feet, simply stretching. It's just so simple, but it's also the extreme awareness of that movement that I find very moving. Stephen?
I would also say it might imply that she then sat for 7 days straight. That she, as we hear the story of the Buddha, after his moment of understanding, he basically sat in contemplation for a very long time. And so I think, personally, I would read this as 7 days of basically sitting in this cross-legged posture, contemplating Nibbana. Because we know that the Arahant can, if she so wishes, take Nibbana as her mental object, which must be pretty nice.
I would think so. And we do know that she's in a state of meditation because at the beginning of the sutta, it says that she's sitting down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding. So it's when she's in meditation that Mara is coming to her and whispering these things in her ear. And surely some of us have had this experience when we've been on retreat or meditation in our own practice, and we've had, these thoughts come to us that do shake us from our place of concentration. And I'll let Stephen talk while I deal with the dogs.
Well, I have to say, from my perspective, Mara's efforts always seem kind of lame. I think I mentioned before that to me, the way Mara comes across in many of these texts is almost like a comic relief. He's coming up to this woman. He clearly thinks he's very suave. He's like, very cool. He's like, don't you want to come and listen to some nice music with me? His big pickup line. And, you could just imagine this bhikkhuni just looking at him almost in disbelief, like, are you talking to me? Do you realize to whom you're dealing with even? And of course, he's just instantly crushed. There's never a retort even. There's never sort of a second attempt to kind of try again. He just kind of slinks away. And so I don't mean to imply that Mara should be taken lightly, but in these poems, it almost takes on a slightly comical aspect to me. And maybe that's just a tribute to the power of these women, that you can just realize that these people are not to be trifled with. And there's just no way these people can be shaken by these lame pickup lines that Mara devises.
It kind of reminds me of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, this kind of knock-kneed guy who is afraid when he hears women laughing. Maybe they're laughing at me. But I totally agree with what you're saying, Stephen. But on the other hand, it took a lot for these women to get to this place, as it would anyone. And one of the things that I found inspiring and powerful was for a lot of us who are not enlightened or not even close, perhaps. These things can really, really shake us. They can be frightening. They can be disturbing. It could be, geez, here I am on a retreat and there's the Buddha right there in front of me and I'm having like sensual desire. And it can really throw someone off. And for me, what this just illustrates is the power of being able to see what is right in front of us. And no matter how difficult it is, no matter how scary, no matter how uncomfortable or humiliating, the point is they don't turn away, right? They turn towards that. And it is in the turning towards and the confronting of that they are able to overcome it. And it may be over and over and over again that they've had to do it, perhaps over lifetimes, but doing it is what is empowering. And how often is it in our lives, for me and myself in my life, do I have challenges? And I do this every day. I turn away. I don't want to do that right now. Oh God, I can't think about that right now. Oh, it's too much. What that does is it empowers this thing, the Mara, and disempowers us and our abilities. And I just think that's so important to emphasize.
It's a great point. And I think especially today when we have to keep in mind the kind of pressure that is placed upon young women to be beautiful, to be sexually attractive to men. And I'm sure that it was not so different 2,500 years ago. And so she says, I offer these things right back to you. I am repelled and humiliated by this foul, putrid body. And so it seems like it couldn't get any stronger than that. And as you said, looking at the body without flinching and understanding what it really is, which not even to me, but even for somebody who has spent a lot of time looking at these texts, and I'm not unaccustomed to this language, it still sort of jangles a little bit in my mind to think about the body in this way, because I want my body to be nice. I don't want to be disgusted by my own physicality. And I think it even might be it might be misconstrued to think that we should be in some way ashamed or disappointed in our body. I don't think that's what's implied here at all. I think we just are being taught that the body is inherently not so wonderful. And
Yes, yeah.
we can just try to see it this way, and it can be of enormous benefit.
Definitely, it's of enormous benefit, as you said, done in a healthy way. And certainly the body has, I mean, even going back to the Greeks with Narcissus, who fell in love with his own image, to see the body in a way that is like this beautiful, amazing, well, it is kind of amazing, but to see it as beautiful on its surface is to have a sense of delusion, because it's not the whole picture, right? But then if we just see it, if we do just see our body as this horrifying, disgusting, awful, hideous thing, that's not seeing the whole picture either. But to me, when I'm reading this section 530 by this foul, putrid body, it's taking a balanced look at the body and its processes.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we should mention 531, that which might be slightly opaque. This sort of statement of attainment. So she talks about, in Buddhism, we can say that the cosmos or the universe, or however you would like to call it, is traditionally divided up into three parts. The lowest part, in which human beings reside, is called the sense sphere, or the sense realm, which is actually not mentioned here, but probably implied. And then there's what's called the form realm, and that is said to be where things like devas live, things of refined form, not coarse form like humans and animals. And then there's said to be an even more refined realm further along, where beings don't even have a physical body, the formless. And then she talks about those peaceful attainments, and I think that should be read as the eight, what's sometimes called the eight mundane meditative attainments, which are not so mundane for normal people, which would be the four jhanas and the four formless attainments, the so-called formless jhanas. But those are said to be mundane too, because they don't necessarily lead directly to the path of stream entry. And so everywhere, she's saying that, I think what she's saying, everywhere darkness has been destroyed, is that there will be, and this is similar to that kind of normal cry of the Arahant, where there'll be no further becoming for me. There's nowhere where she will be taking a new life, anywhere, because this is the end, which is a kind of scary thought.
It is. Maybe we can read the, I don't know, the sutta, the Upalavana Sutta?
Well, we
Or you
could,
think
or
we
maybe
should
if we have any
discuss?
questions specifically about the
Sure.
Therigatha verses, it'd be interesting. There's a lot here too.
There is a lot here. Absolutely. So if you have questions or comments, now would be a great time to raise your blue hand. Not trying to put anyone on the spot. Terania?
Yeah, a couple of things struck me on this, on the earlier, further up, the first verse
Okay.
to 529 and 530.
Yes.
Yeah, that I don't know. It just jumped out at me that, the lure of sensuality, I think, is not to be understated. I mean, spoken by as a greedy type, one just loves sensuality. It's so wonderful. It's so beautiful. Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and yet the Buddha is encouraging us to see beyond these and to, in a way, not necessarily through restraint, although that's part of it, but through understanding, to see into their nature, so that the lure is broken up. And that to me is what she's speaking about here. And it's not an easy thing. I mean, there's a, there's a sutta where the Buddha talks about the gratification that comes through sensuality, and the danger in not seeing the hidden danger in being trapped by it in a way, and that the escape is through understanding. So this is a very profound couple of verses here where she has completely uprooted that craving for gratification in the sense realm. It's like, I don't know about you, but I just go, whoa, girl, you have done it. That is a major task. But it's not through a wrenching away. It's through understanding its nature and not being lured by it, just like she's not lured by Mara.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Speaking of one, as you guys know, I'm in Texas, and okay, this is extremely mundane, but Tex-Mex is amazing food, and Houston is kind of famous for its food. And in terms of being like very, very attached to the sense realm, this like first week I've been here, I've just been like kind of nonstop eating, and I just see it's been awesome. But I also see myself on this thing of like, okay, I'm not going to eat. Okay, just a little bit. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. All right, just a little of this.
Maybe you can carry a card with you with the verses of this poem, and as you go around your day, I offer them right back to you. You can kind of recite that to yourself periodically.
I love it. I love it. That's great.
No, thank you.
It's a very good idea.
I console myself by realizing that it's not a wrenching away. That if I just remember to pay attention, okay, great. You wanted it, you got it. Now how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Just keep watching that for a couple of lifetimes, and you'll get it. Not
Right.
you, all of us. Yeah.
Right. Now I get it. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Stephanie?
Yeah, just a couple of things. One, yeah, I think imagining having a sort of equanimous understanding of that strengthens my belief in rebirth, because it must take many lifetimes. I marvel at that, like somebody offering like really good concert tickets and going, no thank you, I'm committed to my path, and that, like, wow. So I was thinking about that, but the other thing that I was curious about is in 530, where she does talk about, I'm repelled and humiliated by this foul putrid body. I was remembering in the Satipatthana Sutta when in one of the body practices, I think the flesh, bones, contemplating the flesh, bones, and skin, where, I mean, isn't that really pointed toward monastics as a way to support celibacy? But isn't it an effortful practice of really honing in on sort of the nastiness of the body as a way to, and it wasn't, and I'm asking this question. I thought I understood, like, it wasn't really for lay people. It was for the monastics themselves, or which I guess would be called with the bikinis too. I mean, is that?
That's correct. And also, I mean, one of the things that when I was on retreat with Bhikkhu Analio, not only was it specifically aimed towards monastic, but male monastics, especially a lot of the male monastics were, they ordained young. And so, I don't know, I'm not a male, but I've heard that for the male person, that especially like adolescence and 20s, the sex drive is very, very strong. I don't know what that's like as a female. It's not as, but so I can see how focusing on the 32 parts of the body and doing that meditation would be extremely helpful and necessary, especially if one is going to take on an unseen life of, no physical sensuality.
yeah, and so I just wondered how that related to females. To is this potentially where she's coming from? That she's had this training um, in seeing the grossness of the body intentionally.
Mhm. I would say that I would think that yes, the answer to that would be yes. Stephen?
I would say yes in part, but I also would say that this particular piece of the Satipatthana would be a way to demonstrate the true nature of the body, so to speak, to look at it, to face dukkha head on and say, well, what, we're always trying to find things as they, quote, really are. What is the body really? What is it? And so to look at this body, I mean, I guess the question I would have as a response would be, what would be the danger in it?
Mm.
What would be the drawback to attempting this practice as a non-monastic? What, I guess you could say, well, it might make you become a monastic, but I think it's an interesting question in itself to contemplate what could go wrong here if I were to seriously undertake this type of training.
Well,
Well, it's generally believed that for lay people, you take the first 5 of the 32 parts: hair of head, hair of body, skin, teeth, and nails. And if you just contemplate that a little bit and you look at the delusion around these body parts that we have in our culture, you know what I mean? It's like, when you think of it, the fingernails, I mean, a lot of people spend a lot of money to paint them and to make them look gorgeous. And yet they're probably the only part of the body that's already dead, you know? It's like it's waste matter, you know what I mean? And yet the delusion around it can be intense.
Exactly.
So so I hear what you're saying, Stephen. It's to break up the delusion around this body. I mean, it's not only foul, but you have to think of it as foul as well as beautiful in order to have a balanced mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe Aya Vimala would weigh in on this for us as a female monastic, if she can tell us about her experience a little bit with this.
You just have to, yeah, there you go.
I was thinking about it, that also those particular lines as being about contemplation of death, because those same lines would apply to just that awareness of the body over time, that it's decaying and fragile and subject to breakup, fragile. It's also just looking at the body as it is right now is not what it's going to be in the future. And it's very fragile. So that the foulness and the putridness could be after death as well. I think it works for lay people, actually, because that part of our life that is focused on sensual desire and craving is a relatively short period of our lives, whether you're a lay person or a monastic. And I think women have the same. Women have a sexual nature, but I think this applies to lay people too. Like, this body might be really great right now, but think about it when it's been decaying out on the charnel grounds for a couple of months. It's really putrid. You know, so it's kind of a longer look, I think. And what's wonderful now isn't going to be wonderful 30 years from now.
Aya Vimala, that is so profound to me. I'm here in Houston. My friend has cancer and was talking. So my friend is an ex-partner of 30 years ago. And every time I would come back to Texas, I would hear, oh, you're still beautiful. You just haven't changed a bit. You look just like you did when you were 21. And on this trip, and it wasn't intentional, but on this trip, it was, you used to be really beautiful. I was like, I noticed there's a shift there. I noticed there's a used to be where it didn't used to be. And it got me. It was really kind of unpleasant. And again, it wasn't meant mean or unkind, you know, but it was a dose of reality. It's like what you say, Ayavimala, this period of time that we have when we're all that and a bag of chips is really not that long. And we have to get used to the idea that actually probably the greater portion of our life we're not all that.
Does that mean you're going to go sleep in a cemetery tonight to kind of face your mortality?
Maybe so. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. Thank you for sharing. I see that Jerry has had his hand up. Jerry?
So, as usual for me, not always, but pretty much usual, I talk one way, but I'm not quite able to live the way I talk. So I just want to be transparent about that. I found in Analeo Satipatthana class was my first introduction to the strategy to sort of have us turn against our bodies by emphasizing what supposedly is nasty and not nice. So, and I have, in retrospect, probably used that strategy in my own life a few times, and it is somewhat effective, but I find it's not realistic. The body's beautiful. And actually, even the digestive tract and the waste elements, if you look at the miracle of life that's running through us, including waste products and including death, how could we turn against the body and not find a heartfelt beauty about it, not a physical beauty that fades away and leads to sort of unwholesome behaviors? But the fact is, I refuse to turn against my body. It's taken me too long to minimally accept it as it is. And without my body, I wouldn't be talking to you. So I wouldn't be here. So I have to be grateful for its being.
Thank you, Jerry. I think there's a difference between seeing something about the body, like when you go to a museum, for example. I went through Europe November and December, and I really didn't see any paintings of excrement or anything of that, not to be grotesque. But what I saw paintings of was these venerated, valorized, almost worshipped parts of the body. So I think it's just a balancing act. Stephen, were you going to say something about that?
Not so much. I think we have a few more hands up.
Let's
Maybe
go for it.
we can have Jane Marie and Young
Sure.
Quay.
Jane Marie.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say, you know, what I have to say can wait till a later time. But, you know, again, that verse 530, I was exactly going to say that to me, it was clear that she was, you know, doing the 32 parts of the body meditation. And I mean, just think about the opportunities that people in their time had to really see, you know, life and death unvarnished. And we are so far removed from that. And my aunt died last Thursday night, and I went to a service Monday because it was local and we had to wear masks, and she was 101 and a third. And so she had this long life. But, you know, even if you think about the preparations that are made for the body in our culture, it's all, you know, the clothing, you know, the makeup and the hair and all of these things. And we don't have the opportunities to really even start to think about the impermanent nature of the body and the constituent parts. So one of the things that attracted me to Buddhism in the beginning was this meditation. I've never done the whole thing, but just, you know, a couple quick stories. The first time I was in Sri Lanka, I was in a forest sanctuary, and there was a monk living in a cave, and we were able to go down and meet him. And on the stone stairs that led up the side, he had written the 32 parts of the body for his meditation. And he had been an artist in his lay life. So he had done almost in clay, but it was covered with mud, a female figure that was laid out for him to use in his meditation for, again, to combat lust for the body. But it was interesting. And, there too, the monks will go and observe if their fellow monks have donated their bodies to science, and they will go and watch the dissection to face these things up front, And I remember one story about one of the doctors who was, performing this procedure and said to one of the monks, well, when I see this, I think there really is a God, because as someone just said, we've got all of these, systems in our body and how they work together. But the monk said, in return, to me, this proves that there is no God, right? Because you're reducing the body down to the aggregates, at least, the physical form.
Yes, that's a very good point. Thank you. I know that in Sri Lanka, I've been told that it used to be at least a typical practice of monastics to observe autopsies. And just, the guy says, look, here's the small intestine. And, then the monks faint. And it's very hard to face. It's an interesting practice. Thank you for sharing that. Young Kuei?
Yeah, before I speak, I just want to say thank you again, Stephen and Regina, coming back and holding this space. I can't thank you guys enough for this.
Thank you.
And then I just want to make a comment about two comments. One, this mindfulness of death. I've been starting this practice with the Zoom thing, which is I see all these different faces right on Zoom, and I practice that we're all of the nature to die. So each of us on the Zoom screen, each little picture of each of you are dying, but then I see myself as part of that thing too. So I can't avoid just sort of saying, oh, you're gonna die, you're gonna die. I see me in there too, and I see that. And so I've been just share that little secret practice I have with Zoom these days. And then this talk about I find that in my practice, what's working more, it's not so much this aversion or renunciation, but more just this weariness to the repetitive nature of sensuality and greed. I am a greedy type too, and I think what's helping me more is actually just getting back to my intention and just practicing, knowing the pains of the keep going back to it again and again and again, and feeling so trapped and enslaved by it. And that's been helping me rather than the aversion to the thing itself, because it depends on my attitude, what I need at the time. And the body could be really beautiful one day, but cannot be really ugly the next day, or the ice cream could look really distasteful one day. Another day could be really just what I wanted. So anyways, let me share that. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that it's a very powerful practice, and I wouldn't say to not for no one to just dismiss it out of hand as a practice for someone else. And I think it's worth at least dipping one's toe into looking at these things with a type of courage and seeing how that works out. And as I said, it should not lead to a type of sense of inadequacy or depression. I don't think the point of this is to make us feel glum about our nature, but rather I think the great hope is that through seeing things as they really are, we actually can set aside a lot of suffering.
Thank you. It looks like we are not going to have time to get to everyone, with our great apologies. So please, since we're going to continue on this topic, please write your question down for next time. And I wanted to ask Taranee, did you have anything else to add before we say goodbye?
No, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We can do a brief metta. So why don't we do that? Understanding the suffering that's in this world, and understanding the suffering that we all experience, we wish first for our own suffering to come to a type of cessation. And then with that cessation, we can reach out to others and perhaps help them allay a degree of their suffering. We wish for ourselves, as we wish for all living beings, that we may be happy, contented, healthy, free from illness, and that we may live with ease. We wish this for ourselves as we wish for all living beings above and below the earth and everywhere in this cosmos and beyond. May all beings everywhere to the end of time be happy, healthy, and live with ease. And once again, thank you all so very much for joining us. It's always a most wonderful, wonderful pleasure, and we will continue
With the
with our,
mighty Upalavanna, one of my
yes,
favorites.
yes, it's going to be super fun. So please make sure you come and join us this Sunday, and we'll see you then. Until then, have a wonderful day or a wonderful evening. Thank you
Bye,
all so much.
everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
so
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Sunday.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Good
you. Good
night.
night.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.